Welcome to an amazing Monday, as always, Leadership Monday, start of the week, getting our goals and all of our amazing, things aligned for the week. And today I am beyond excited. I always say I'm excited, but it's truth. I'm happy. It's like I love what I do, and it's an act of love and passion. So I'm extremely excited to introduce another lady who is equally excited and does the work she does out of love and passion and conviction. And in this case, she happened to have the superpowers to change the world with law and her law degree in psychology and neuroscience. We're going to have to talk about that. But I am thrilled to introduce to you Marlenne Doss, founder of Doss Law, a full service legal office specializing in real estate, wills and estates, corporate law, immigration. And today we are here to speak about primarily wills and estates because it's an area that it affects every single person. Right. And is especially for women, is an area that is, I find, it is misunderstood. It is greatly misunderstood. And just in my conversations with you, I find I'm always shocked. I'm shocked and a little embarrassed. Yeah. When you think you know something and then suddenly it's like, no, that's not the way it works. So welcome, Marlenne.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here, and I hope that we all get something out of this.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you for having me here, Alina.
Absolutely. So I know you're going to go over 5 myths and mistakes, and there's one that I know, I don't know where you're going to place it because you're kind of guiding us through these, but there was something that you said to me in our conversation that absolutely blew my mind, is that the second a woman gets married, or a man for that matter, but we take care of women. So the second that a woman gets married, her existing will is null and void.
Yes,
null and void.
That's correct.
Whether it's your first marriage, second marriage, third marriage, fourth marriage, is absolutely null and void. So I do want us to touch on that because it's super important. But I let you tell us, where in your conversations, where do you find that is the area where wills and estates are really misunderstood?
Oh, there's so many.
We're going to try to pick the top 5, especially as it relates to women.
Yes. Okay. So I think the first one is that people put it off. They think that it's not the right time for them to prepare a will. Sometimes it's because they don't think they have enough assets, or they, maybe they're not married, don't have children, whatever it is.
Or they may be young. When I saw your bullet, I thought, a lot of young people, probably young ladies, right, would probably think you wouldn't even register, right?
Yes.
How young is too young? Like how young would you recommend ladies to start really having a will?
As soon as you own any assets, whether it's jointly or on your own, or you have children, I would strongly recommend getting your estates planning sorted out and in place. I like to tell my clients that it's like having an insurance policy. You insure your cars, you insure your life, and we know that there's a couple of things that are inevitable, death and taxes.
Of course, yes.
And we should plan accordingly. People don't like to talk about death, understandably, but it's not going to prevent it. And, people build their wealth. They spend their whole lives accumulating wealth, doing what they think is right for their families and stuff. And then they leave out
sacrificing a lot of time, right?
Energy,
saving and sacrificing.
Right.
And you want to make sure that it all
falls into place.
Oh, yeah, right. Like you wish it would have.
Yeah.
Now, in preparing for today's show, I was very surprised to find out. We're a global brand. We are headquartered in Canada, and you are a lawyer here in Ontario. So we're going to use some Canadian statistics and some Ontario statistics. But even if you hear us say something that may or may not be applicable to your home state or your home country, just take it as a question, right? Take it as a point of inquiry that,
That's
I
right.
wonder how it works for me, right? I wonder how it works where I am. So
Mhm.
I was surprised to find out that 51% of Canadians do not have a will.
I actually think it might be higher than that.
That just, I'm
The
getting
percentage.
goosebumps on my legs. Just like that
And
is
we're
unbelievable.
also the expectation of how much wealth is going to be transferred in the next 10 to 20 years
Yes,
is
yes.
an extreme amount of transfer of wealth from
It's
families because of
the
the next,
greatest
yes,
transfer of wealth between generations
yes, that's
is
right. And
occurring between baby boomers and their beneficiaries.
exactly. And too many people don't
Hmm.
have their plans in place like they should.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of people think that it's just going to work out at the end, or, if they have joint accounts or if they have bank accounts, they can just add joint beneficiaries onto it and everything will be taken care
Hmm.
of afterwards. But that's not how it works. And that's not how the law works if you don't have a will in place. So
Yeah.
I would say if you've thought about it, then at least ask the question, consult with a lawyer and say, is this the right time for me to do it?
Hmm.
If you contact me, I will honestly tell you yes, or wait, you don't have
Hmm.
anything that needs to be passed down, or this is what will happen with what you do have, or yes, let's get on this and put something in place for you. You know?
Here's the thing is as soon as you're right, I mean, if you're a kid, you may have, as soon as you graduate from college or university, you may have, a work life insurance that
Yeah.
automatically assigns, beneficiary. When you're starting out at that point, you're right, it's good to know, like it's good to know to be diligent about all these things in your life. But I
Mhm.
think you're right. It's the second that you begin to purchase that home, the second that you begin to be common law, right? The second that you begin to build a life, right? You need to make sure that you take care of it, and that
Mhm.
because when it comes to wills and states, there's another part of it that is super important, which is your power of attorney,
Yes.
right? And that is something that you should do, as soon as you're a young adult, like 18, as soon as your parents are not your guardians, you should begin the process of having your power of attorneys, and
Yes.
meet with your lawyer every few years to update and do all these things. But as
Mhm.
we're talking, our audience is primarily Generation X women,
Mhm.
and a bit of late boomers and early millennials. And our demographic right now is going through a lot of changes in their lives, right? They're either,
Yes.
remarrying, entering into common law, or entering their second marriage. And
Yes.
they're coupling and uncoupling. I think someone
Mhm.
said that. And this is where it gets blended families. This is where wills and states are so important, especially for women, right? Because
Yes.
you might be coming into a relationship or into a common law, whether it's the first time, second time, third time, fourth time.
Mhm.
It is like, kudos for trying, for keep trying if you're into the fourth, fifth time. But as you're coming into these relationships, even if you're being diligent and you have prepared your will and you have your
Mhm.
power of attorneys, you told me something that, like I said at the beginning of the show, that shook me to the ground, which is the second that that you get married, anything that you had prepared before is null and void.
That's right.
So
Yes.
tell us about that.
Sure. Okay. So there's a few events, as you're mentioning, that do affect
Mhm.
how your wills, if you do have them in place, are read by the courts or
Mhm.
otherwise. If you had prepared a will and then you got married and you didn't do another will, it's as if you've passed away without the will. So as
Oh my
Carolina
God.
was just saying, your previous will is invalid because the courts assume that it's not your intention to leave out your new spouse.
Okay. Now,
So
before we go, because I know
mhm,
there's a so, but before
yes,
we go, I do want to know if common law is the same as getting married. Is it still
it's certainly
It's the
not.
same. Oh, it's not. See?
It's not.
Oh my goodness.
And this
Okay.
is the other thing that people don't understand. Common law is not the same as having spousal rights. There are different elections under Family Law Act,
Okay.
etc., that you can make. Okay. And if you live in a house together and you own the house, or one of you owns the house and it becomes a matrimonial home, so under family law, there are some rights that do apply. However, you're not automatically considered a spouse. And the intestate laws that apply to spouses do not apply to you. So there's also that gray area of people getting separated, and perhaps like during the period of separation, which can take years, and finalizing their divorce, they enter into common law relationships and things like that.
Yeah.
So if you're entering or leaving a relationship, there's a few things, that you should consider. And estate planning does not mean just your wills and your powers of attorneys. It could also mean cohabitation agreements. It could mean separation agreements. It could mean
prenups. Would prenups
all
fall
of
in
those
there?
things. I would say so. I mean, it's really whatever.
It's really
you need for
planning.
your,
Yeah.
Exactly. It's your planning.
Okay.
So having the conversation is very important. So yes, common law, and people do think that I'm, I have a common law spouse, or I am married, so I don't need to.
I am married. So when
worry about my will.
So I have only been married once. I have been divorced, because the world knows this. And to crystallize what you just said, first of all, when you're separated, you're still married.
You're still legally married.
So your will is still the case. What if you change it? What if you separate and you change your will?
That's okay. You can change your will. You can change your will.
So it doesn't nobody can come back and claim that, oh, I'm still their husband. We were only separated, even if somebody has changed their will.
No, that's when you want to change it, to be honest with you. Because if they're on their way to being your ex, you don't want your will to say, I give everything to my spouse, as it probably does say when you got married, right?
Correct.
You don't want your ex necessarily to be the person who's going to become your power of attorney for property and personal care, which we'll speak about a little bit more a little later.
Okay.
But you need to make sure of these things. And if you are each entering into different relationships and you come with your own children, without having your proper wills in place, it's really easy to disinherit your children, right? So if you enter into a blended family, especially if you're remarrying, right? And you enter into a blended family without that will in place, it's easy to disinherit your own biological children for either of you, right? And it's usually not the intention.
And these are the conversations. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, or to result in an unequal distribution, not in the distribution that you want to have for you or your spouse's children, families, etc. Right?
And these are the conversations that you want to have.
Yes.
Like early on. It's like, hello, you're really nice. By the way, I come with a prenup and I want want my will to be this way, right? Because you don't want to, blending families, there's a huge, emotional investment and a huge leap of faith, especially when there are young children, or children still at home. You don't want to have these conversations after the fact that it may jeopardize the relationship, right? Like it's a huge thing, right? You don't want
to. Sometimes the children are not Sometimes the children are not of the same age. One person can have children in their 20s in college. The other person can still have minors, which means your support obligations, etc., are different, right? So it's really important to have those conversations. In the same vein, if you do get divorced and you had your will and you don't update it, what the courts will do is they'll read out your spouse. So if your will said, I leave everything to my spouse and then to my children, and your children are minors, well, now your children are the next to inherit, right? So without having the will properly drafted, which is why I would encourage you, or discourage you, I should say, from using any sorts of will kits, because they don't address,
they don't give you the advice,
and they cause so much trouble, to be honest. And there's so much litigation that results from people trying to save the couple of $100s and do it themselves.
I was just going to say, getting a will is not really that expensive. It's not, right?
It depends on the complexity of your planning.
Exactly.
But it really is. And when it's done right, you shouldn't have to update it that frequently. Okay. If there's huge changes in circumstances or whatever, then we will do so. And sometimes they're minor changes, which can be done with what's called a codicil. which is very cost effective. But for the most part, if they're drafted correctly, and you don't have huge changes in circumstances, like you can buy houses, you can open bank accounts, close bank accounts. We don't usually deal with such specifics in your wills, so that you don't have to redo it every time your assets change a little bit. But you can still have a conversation with your lawyers when those things do happen, just to make sure that everything is still covered, to make sure that we look at estate planning also includes tax planning, right? So we want to make sure that the taxes, whatever is going to be owed by your estate or by you personally, will also be covered, so it doesn't become a burden on your beneficiaries or whoever it is that you're leaving behind.
Okay, so to recap, because this is extremely important for women, especially when you're entering a second relationship and have your children. Because myself, like every single woman I know, their number one reason for leaving is the protection of their children. So we need to make sure that this is clearly understood. So one, if you enter into a common law relationship, and that's going to vary depending on your state, depending on your country. But if you enter into a common law relationship with someone, that you do not have the same spousal rights as if you are married. And that is something that you need to speak to a lawyer to clarify that. Second, whatever will you have in place, whether it's your first, second, third, fourth, fifth marriage, the second you get married again is null and void. And the third is what you said, that is making sure that your children, your spouse, that if you are exiting a relationship, that you immediately change your will so that it doesn't read, "I leave everything to my spouse." So these are very, very important, changes that women go through in life that we need to. This needs to be your second. You're going to change the locksmith. You're going to call your lawyer immediately right after. Another myth and mistake that women do is, "My family will sort everything out."
Yes, this is actually quite important, because people think that whether it's the next of kin or if your spouse is still alive and you pass away. But they also don't think about the events that do happen sometimes where your spouse passes with you. Then who's stepping in, right? Or if your spouse has dementia or some sort of incapacity when you've passed, then what happens? So what people need to understand is, even if you don't have a will, often there is a court process to get somebody appointed as what's called the executor and the trustee, who's going to deal with the administration of your estate. Now, when you have your will, you get to say who you want that person to be. It can be your spouse. You can name alternatives. You can name people to act jointly, depending on whether it makes sense for your situation or not. But having the alternatives there is very important. And often in my discussions with clients, when they have, 2, 3, 4 children and they're deciding who to name, we get into it and we start talking about who's going to be capable, who's going to want to do it. If you're naming one person and you're not naming the other 3, you should have the conversations with them now. Don't let them be surprised and find out later, because that's going to cause disputes between them.
Yeah,
they're not here to clean up the mess.
Yeah, and they're grieving. I mean, at this point,
grieving,
right?
Exactly. They're grieving and often irrational, to be frank.
And as we're talking about these, I'm thinking, okay, it's Monday. It's like, why are we talking about this, right? But as women, as empowered women, as women that now more than ever are really matriarchies. Like, we are running most of the household. We're beginning to run our businesses. We are, definitely accepting and stepping on and stepping out to own our leadership. These are conversations that need to be had. This is part of having your house in order in every aspect of it, especially as it comes to relationships. I cannot tell you enough the horror stories in our travels, in our journeys, that we have heard about. People that enter into second relationships and their wills and house was not in order, and now all of a sudden their children are left with nothing. And these are people our age whose parents have done this and they have been left with nothing. Right. So it's not just about, don't think of just about your own mortality, but you're also helping like Gen X. We're the sandwich generation. We're helping our parents and our children. So these could be the conversations that you need to have with your parents, right?
Yes.
Making sure that they have everything in order,
Yes.
right? It's so
Yes.
that you don't end up yourself as the child fighting with your siblings over
That's
it.
right.
Or
Yes.
not fighting, but you know what I mean? Having things like this come between a family, which is,
And there's so many things that people don't tell others about, right? You can say my family is going to sort it out, but do they know where all of your assets are? Do they know what bank accounts you have open? Do they know your Facebook password? Do they know your LinkedIn password? Do they know your online banking passwords? Is there anywhere that one person can go to, or are they going to have to get the lawyer to do all this digging and fact finding, which is going to cost your estate a lot more than if you just put it in a nice little clean pile for them?
That's right. That's right. And is especially as single women, and women entrepreneurs, which I know you and I, well, you're one of our mentor experts at Powerful Women Today. And you guide us in that direction as leadership. But there's one area that we probably won't get a chance to discuss today, but certainly I hope that we're able to do this many, many, many times, is to speak about, as more women become entrepreneurs and we own our own companies, that your company needs a will.
That's right.
Right. And that was the first, and honestly, like after our last conversation, I'm just sitting back and going like, darn it. It's like, just when it's like, just when you think you've got a hold of things, then you're just like one more, and it's like, oh, I had not thought about that. It's like rats. I did not know about that, right? So part of Powerful Women Today's mandate, to champion and empower women's emotional and financial independence, which I really admire, your, which is where we came together, because not only, are you an amazing attorney, but you really, really champion women, and you go that extra mile to warn and to advise, although your clients are, everyone, like complete, diversity and inclusion, but you do have a special place for women. So, which is the reason we love you. And so the next point, it's just a love fest. Our next point is, I already told, my mother, sister, best friend, that I like them to take care of my kids. And also before I pass it on to you, what does it mean if your children are minor and you assign someone else to take care of your kids, but they're still an ex-dad? They're still, sorry, an ex-husband. They're never an ex-dad. An ex-husband, right? Like, how does that work?
Okay, so that's a complicated question, and it depends on the circumstances. No, that's okay. It is. It depends on the circumstances. So, I mean, you're going to still write your will with what you wish your children would happen with your children. Okay. If when you pass away, there's already a separation agreement in place, there's a custody order, etc., and the ex feels like they would be the best fit. And so even if you name it in your will, the courts still have to appoint the custodian of your children, the guardian of your children. Okay. Your will specifies who you think would be best. Okay. And you can have the conversations with them prior to. You want to have the conversations with them, make sure that they're willing to. Don't surprise anybody with this. And then it's up to the courts still ultimately to make that decision. So if there's a dad in place who's been a good dad and whatever, he might still trump. Okay. But if dad has issues, even if he's still alive and stuff, and dad has issues, or
or mom has issues,
been involved, yes, whichever one it is, both get the chance to speak in court. The will support your position. Whoever's trying to get appointed as the guardian, the will be there to say, Mom, this was her wish, and she knew, and she was the primary caregiver or whatever it is, and wanted me to take over. We have the same belief systems, the same whatever it is, and I am financially able to. I am equipped. This is what will happen. You go with a plan. Okay. So, if the court agrees that you, who are named in the will, are the better fit, then you will likely become the guardian. Not to say that the dad won't continue to have access, or they'll have to sort out that stuff, but it's still important to do it in your will, because if dad predeceases you, then at least your will is in place saying, I'm the last one, and this is what I want to happen with my children. Right? Presumably dad would also have done a will after the breakup, and he might have other wishes of who the guardians will be, right? And that's okay.
That is true.
That's nothing that you can control. It's scary. It really
And
is. Like it's scary for a mom to be in that position where the best you can do is express your wish
and
and
the
hope
best you
that it
can
will be
do
complied with. But
the best you can do is work with someone like you to make sure that
yes,
you dot your I's, you cross your T's to the best of your ability. And
that's right.
and also there's something, you know, in my background's in HR, so I
Mhm.
dealt with a lot of people, right? And people's circumstances change just because
Mhm.
someone has as you assign someone to take care of your kids, right? Or
Yes,
versus your ex-husband, right? That one person that you may have assigned, their life may have changed, right?
that's
So
right.
working with someone like Marlenne helps you identify a lot of, well, what if, right? Like what will happen
Yes,
if like the backup, right? Is,
yes.
and also to think of all the things that normally we don't think about because we just don't know about.
And what
So,
people don't realize, sorry, Carolina, is
oh, go
that
ahead, darling.
um, if you don't have your will, there is laws in place that do state what will happen with all of your assets, with your children. It's not your children are going to go to the government. Nobody will ever see them again. But even your wealth that's supposed to be left to your children, if you don't name in your will who's going to be the trustee and the executor, then there's a government body in Ontario called the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee that's going to step in place to manage the assets for your children until they're 18, and then just hand everything to them willy-nilly for them to fend for themselves.
Oh my
A will,
goodness.
having a will in place when you have younger children is important, if for nothing else, just for that, so you can plan how they're going to get these funds and in what increments and who's going to manage their, what's left to them until they're able to step in and
Yeah.
and take control.
And as we mentioned about Generation X for women being the sandwich generation, and we are dealing a little bit with aging parents, right, that we're
Yes.
taking care of, which brings about, helping them make sure that in a very gentle way that their house is in order, and it brings about the issue of
Yes.
mental capacity. Um,
Mhm.
how and when do you make sure, like, how often should you revisit your will, right? Like if you build it as part of your pattern, or if you train your
Yes.
family, that is something that we revisit, we update all of our information every 5 years, or every
Yes.
however many years, by the time is necessary later in life, is not a big
Mhm.
surprise.
Yes. I would say ideally, at least give it a thought
Mhm.
annually.
Oh,
Pick your
wow.
anniversary date or a birthday or whatever it is, and just give it a thought. Has anything changed substantially? Have my children, often become adults now? Has
Mhm.
somebody passed away? Have I accumulated a substantial amount of wealth in this last year that, some of these
Especially when
things
you
should
own
be
your own
revisited?
businesses. Especially for
Right.
women that own your own businesses,
Yes.
you can go, you can be
Things
the
change.
next thanks lady, right? That
That's
goes
right.
from, having a
Yes.
small little company to being a massive brand in a span
Yes.
of just a few years.
Yes.
So
And if
yeah,
not that
things
often,
change.
then I would say at least every 3 years.
3
Look at
years.
it. Have my passwords changed? Have my profiles changed? Have I,
Mhm,
bought, sold shares in whatever it is? Have
mhm.
I closed bank accounts, opened bank accounts, changed mortgages? Who's my
That's
mortgage currently with? And do I have a recent statement in my portfolio or my trusted lockbox where everybody will know where everything is, right?
Sorry, I laugh because I'm having a little mental anxiety attack here.
Yeah. Oh, okay. No, don't,
'Cause
don't.
no, I'm just joking. But it's true, right?
But
Like, oh my God, like half the time, even I come across situations where I don't even remember the passwords, right? Never mind, passing it on to
yes,
someone to act on your behalf, whether it's
yes,
temporarily.
yes.
This could also be just temporary, right?
Mhm.
That you are needing someone to assist you, opposite to
So
permanent. Yeah.
now the what people need to understand is that your will doesn't deal with that stuff. Your will only dictates what will happen with your estate after you pass away. What you need while you're alive, and in the event that you may not be capable or maybe out of the country and somebody else needs to step in for you or
Yeah,
whatever the
like let's
circumstances
not
are.
think of like the worst scenarios. Like
Mhm.
think of,
Yes,
like happy scenarios.
Yes,
right?
what you need are the powers of attorney, and there's two kinds: the one for the personal care and the one for property.
Mhm.
And I'm happy to discuss them with anyone. But the key thing about those two things is that you can only create them while you're capable. So I've had, like children with elderly parents approach me and say, we found out that my mom has dementia, my dad has Alzheimer's, whatever it is, and I need to go to the bank for them. What can we do? And my first question is, are they capable? Do they understand, what they need to do? What they're signing if we create a power of attorney. If the answer is no, I unfortunately have to say, I'm sorry, we can't do it by a power of attorney. Now we have to do a guardianship application,
Oh my
which
God.
is a
You
court
see,
application, which is way more costly,
correct.
right?
And more
So
traumatic for all the parties involved.
yes,
The
it's
key is
just
to
way
plan
more
ahead.
detailed. Yes,
Exactly. And Marlene, we're the best of friends, and I'm hoping that we'll do this on several other topics. Just from our
yes,
conversation, we know that, we are going to need your guidance. And for anybody that wants to reach out to Marlene Doss from Doss Law, here's her email, info@dosslaw.ca, and your phone number. And I know you are very generous. You offer a lot of discovery sessions, and we'll be having workshops, and we'll be, because women really need to, this is part of empowerment.
yes,
This is part of owning your life, and about living life in the driver's seat. So I know we're going to be collaborating lots. There's going to be lots of workshops, lots of opportunities to even to find out the questions, right?
mhm,
Like things that you should know, things that you ought to know. Because
yes,
one thing I've learned, lawyers are your best friends before things happen. I mean, they're your
yes.
best friends when things happen. When you're like real, you're your best friends. But the time to do it, the least expensive, and the last to do it, the time to do it is before things happen.
That's right.
That's when it can be done, like you said, in a half an hour, in an hour. It's like, a
It's
couple of
really the most
$100, right?
cost-effective thing for you and your estate. It
Mhm.
allows you to leave that legacy of peace,
Yeah,
and if I had one little take home for this
of
to
course,
the
darling.
women that
Of
are
course.
listening here,
Mhm.
um, I hear from a lot of women, oh, I don't really know what's going on with our finances. I don't really know. My husband takes care of this. My husband takes care of that. My husband takes care of this, if they're in relationships. And I would just encourage you, for both of your sakes, to know what's happening. Be
Yeah.
informed, be aware of how the money is being managed, where it is, because if something
To know
happens
all
to
the
them, and I've seen that,
passwords, know all
I've
all
seen
of
this
the
stuff
information.
where even young women who are married, their husbands suddenly pass away and they're left with one, two, three young children to raise on their own, which is stressful enough. They're mourning, and I can't imagine what they're going through, and they just don't know what they should have known.
That's right.
You
And
don't need to be more involved than you would like if you're not comfortable, but just know,
just
know what
yeah,
everything
just
is, if nothing else.
because then you're making a choice. Then you're making an
Yes.
informed choice. And
Mhm.
and also when you do it at a time when you don't need it, you're making decisions in a cool state of mind, right? In a
Yes.
calm, kind of pragmatic state of mind, opposite to when everything is happening, and there's a zillion thoughts going
Mhm.
through your mind. So thank you so much for such an
My pleasure.
session. I know I
No,
feel bad because I'm always asking you questions, and
it's my pleasure.
it's because I know there's a great need, and like I
Go
said,
ahead.
Marlene and I are going to be doing a lot of collaborations. We're having a series of workshops and just information sessions coming up, because our personal mission and vision is to empower and inform as many women as we can so that they live an empowered life. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you again on Wednesday for Money Talks. So have a wonderful
Thank you,
afternoon,
Carolina.
and
Thank you, everyone.
thank you. Bye.
Bye.